The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Question 6 is, why did you say that? So you might, you want them to elaborate a little bit on why they've said that. So hear what they have to say about that. Can you cite an example? So this helps you to anchor it back into reality of what it is that people are talking about. So how might this area of growth help? 8, what problems or dilemmas have you had to deal with over the past few months that were challenging? So you can look at some of the problems over the month and what they are. So now you can see that we're moving into problem-based areas of learning. So what problems? 9, what happened? So you obviously want them to explain what the problem or dilemma they were in and what actually went on at that time. And you might want to ask them how they approached the situation. So I'm sure they had some approach to that became quite relevant, or perhaps it wasn't in hindsight. So have a think about that. Um, and then of course, question 11 is a really good question because when these problems and dilemmas and challenges arrive in our work, what we're attempting to do is hopefully learn something from it. So you might then ask the question, and question 11 is, well, what did you learn from that? It's a good question to ask. And of course, if you're coming into the conversation and wanting to be prepared for it, and you have to think about a particular dilemma, problem, or challenge that you faced recently, have a think, well, what was the key learning that you got from that? And, if you think enough about it, there is often a key learning. Question 12, how would you do things differently next time? So, that gives the person another opportunity to think about, the ways that they would have managed or handled it better. And that's fine, because often what that does is it brings up a whole lot of self-learning that comes out of that as well. So if you're coming into the conversation, I want you to have a think about a situation where it was difficult or challenging for you and what you might have learned from it and how you might have approached it differently. All right. Now, number 13, finally, is what knowledge, skills, or capabilities would have helped you deal with the issue you raised with me. Okay, so just a general question to finish up with. Now, you can imagine that out of that, there will be a couple of key things that people will take away or want to pursue as far as growth. And please don't think that learning and development is all about sending people off to training courses. It's not necessarily about that, although, some of it is, of course. A lot of it can be just around showing someone how to do something, or it could be observing other people in the workplace, or it could be buddying up with someone, or it could be coached by yourself if you happen to be the team leader or manager. So think about learning in a broader context than just sending people off to courses to complete and to come back and apply them. So that's the conversation of learning and development, and they're the 13 questions. As I said, some of them you can shortcut, but you'll notice that there are 3 key themes running through them. There's technical knowledge or capability, there's personal development, and there's problem-based learning. So we're covering all 3 dimensions of learning and development. So that's the learning and development conversation, folks. So what I want to do now is just finish up talking about some key things that will help you improve your conversations, notwithstanding that you've already had 3 and probably, or hopefully, things are moving along more smoothly for you. I just want to check to see if there's there's no questions. That's fine. All right. So if you're the coachee, what we would refer to as the person on the receiving end of the conversation, and you all would be at some point. Obviously prepare, come to the conversation having thought about those 13 statements or questions, because that will add to a richer conversation if you've given some thought around some of those issues. So prepare, take some initiative and book the conversation. If your team leader's been busy or your manager's been busy and hasn't got around to booking your learning and development conversation, then by all means take the initiative and book the conversation with them via email or however you do it. And when you come into the conversation, it's really important it's easier said than done, of course, is to be constructive and open-minded, to listen to perhaps what might be a different point of view. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but just be open and receptive enough to hear it, because if you don't hear it, then you won't learn anything from it. That's important. And you can agree to disagree wherever you feel appropriate. You don't have to agree with everything that your team leader or manager says or thinks. Just agree to disagree and move on. That's fine. And remember, this is not a performance review. It's simply an opportunity for two people on equal terms to come together and have a conversation on a particular topic, in this case, learning and development. Now, if you are the team leader or manager, some things to think about as well on the right-hand side. Consider the questions from your own perspective. So it's good for you to actually think about those, because remember, you're going to be there on the end of a learning and development conversation anyway, no matter who you are. So have a think about them and do the preparation. By all means, you can bring a list of questions to the meeting. There's no problem with that. But I would really emphasize to you not to be reading them off. That's not the idea. So don't do that. Book a time and place that's mutually suitable, and be sensitive and aware of what's going on around you at the time in terms of workload. That becomes really important. Consider meeting out of the office. Now, I know some people have had great success with this, and if you haven't already done so, and you might like to try it, why don't you go and meet in a coffee shop and have a conversation over a cup of coffee? You might actually find that the conversation actually flows much better as a result of that. So, yeah, by all means, have the conversation outside. Refer to the questions, but don't read them off, as I mentioned. By all means, have a list of them in front of you so that you don't forget any, but please don't read them off, because it's supposed to be a relaxed conversation, albeit a productive one, but not you reading somebody out the questions. That's not the way it works. And look, be patient. Give the person a chance to respond and elaborate. Ask them to respond and to elaborate. Can you tell me more about that? What did you mean by that? Can you give me an example? Whatever it takes to get the person to elaborate on their response is a good idea. And I guess finally, an important point there is to be respectfully curious. And by respectfully curious, I mean ask open-ended questions like what, why, when, who, how, and which. If you start any question with any of those words, what will happen is you're more than likely going to get more than a one-word answer. So what did you mean by that? Why did you say that? Who was involved, and so forth. So that will give you some tips and hints on having a better conversation. So folks, that's pretty much it. I just want to make sure that there aren't any questions before we sign off. Doesn't look like there is. Thank you for your involvement today. I will, as usual, post this up on the share source site, There's two things. There's the slides and the recording. So thank you, and I wish you all the best, as I said, for 2018, and I'm hoping that you have a fantastic learning and development conversation. So all the very best. Thank you.